Good evening. For the past 7 years, we've been hearing the pros and cons of building a new sports stadium in the Twin Cities area. There have been a parade of proposals for domed and undomed facilities at various locations in the metro area. All have failed. Now the weight of the stadium issue rests with the Metropolitan Sports Facilities Commission, an independent body formed last year by the legislature. State lawmakers have been given the commission the authority to use up to $55 million worth of revenue bonds to build a facility, and it is the commission's job to find the best location and design. But that's if the commission decides to build. One of their options is to stick with the Metropolitan Stadium as it is. And there are other questions. Should it be domed? Should it be in Minneapolis or Bloomington? At this point, the Stadium Commission has less than 4 months to decide this $55 million question. On December 1st, not before or after, the Stadium Commission will announce what it's going to do about a new stadium. But the public is still split on whether any stadium should be built. A special statewide poll conducted for Channel 5 News shows 47% of us thinking a new stadium is necessary. 46% thinking it isn't necessary. Men and younger persons favor building a stadium more than women and older persons. Those who favor a new stadium think the present facility is too small, is outdated, and suffers from the lack of a dome. Many of you feel our sports teams deserve a better facility, but opponents of the new stadium say building such a facility will raise taxes, would cost too much, or would be a waste of money. Many say the present facility in Bloomington is adequate. Despite the split in public opinion, the Stadium Commission can choose from 5 possible options. The first is a no-build option, if the commissioners decide a new stadium would not be economically feasible. Second, a multi-purpose domed facility. Up to $55 million in revenue bonds can be issued for this option. Those bonds provide a risk to the buyer and cannot be transferred to property tax rolls. Third, the undomed multipurpose. This stadium would be built with a spending ceiling of $42 million and would host all types of activities. Fourth, a new football soccer-only facility. This option would supplement Met Stadium, and the $37.5 million in bonding would provide for some remodeling of the Met as well as construction of the new facility. The last option would be to remodel the Met. It would cost $25 million and would keep the stadium as an open multi-purpose facility. If the Met is remodeled, many more seats will have to be added. A recent rock concert at the Met attracted 65,000 fans who jammed all the seats and the baseball field. Any new facility built is required by law to have seats for that many spectators, so major modifications would be needed at the Met. How do you feel about the various options? Our special Channel 5 poll shows that a majority of you, 43%, favor a domed multi-purpose stadium. Almost no one we surveyed wants a new stadium without a dome, but 29% of Minnesotans would like to see Met Stadium remodeled, the second highest response. Some, however, have doubts about whether a major remodeling of the Met is wise.
I think is a very real possibility to do this sort of thing in a different climate, remodeling an old stadium. But the cost factors just become astronomical when you think you really still are not going to have something new, and the wear and tear does continue. So at this point in my mind, it is the least viable of the options that I would consider.
But there are those who feel differently. This group, called Save the Met, has been campaigning for a remodeling of the stadium with an addition of 7,000 seats. By not building a new stadium, the group feels ticket prices can be held down to a responsible level to benefit fans.
Got a good ballpark here. We don't need no one. Save it!
Coming up next, a history of Major League sports in the Twin Cities, and we'll look at some of the events that have shaped the stadium issue. Metropolitan Stadium was built for $3 million and opened in 1956, hosting the old Minneapolis Millers baseball team. In 1960, when it looked like Major League sports might be coming to the Twin Cities, the stadium seating was expanded at a cost of $5 million. And in 1961, the Twins played their first home game of the franchise in the Met, launching baseball fever in the Twin Cities. 5 5 months later, a similar reaction greeted the Minnesota Vikings for their first home game. The initial enthusiasm for Major League Sports grew steadily, and 1965 was a banner year for Met Stadium and the fans. First, the All-Star Baseball game was held at the Met, and later in the year, pennant fever gripped the fans as they packed the stadium to watch the Twins play the Los Angeles Dodgers in the World Series. Even though the Twins lost the series in the 7th game, the team, fans, and sports officials were ecstatic about the experience. Major League Sports were in the Twin Cities to stay.
We're gonna win, Twins, we're gonna score. We're gonna win, Twins, watch that baseball soar. Crack out a home run, shout a hit, hooray! Cheer for the Minnesota Twins today.
That very same year, a new type of sports stadium opened in Houston. The Metrodome was designed to combat Houston's tremendous heat, humidity, and 60-inch annual rainfall. Building the first controlled climate sports stadium helped land a Major League Baseball team for the city, but it carried a stiff price, $45 million. Despite the high price, a dozen other cities got dome stadium fever, and with Minnesota's unpredictable weather, it wasn't long before people in the Twin Cities were talking domes too. The first serious proposal came from the city coordinator's office in Minneapolis. The 1971 design called for a 65,000-seat stadium with an enclosed ramp for 5,000 cars. The facility would have been built just north of downtown near 1st Avenue North and 9th Street at a cost of about $50 million. The plan to finance involved revenue bonds to be paid off by a tax on tickets and rent from the Vikings. But the idea was not popular with many city residents. Fearing increases in their property taxes, they voted down the proposal in a 1973 referendum. Minneapolis gave up on its proposal, and the stadium issue was in limbo until 1975. When a state Senate subcommittee determined that Met Stadium was inadequate and suggested better facilities to keep the sports teams in town.
You know, from the fan standpoint, the sight lines are by far the worst in the National Football League. Fans in the east side are further away from the sideline than in any other stadium in the NFL. And the fans on the west side in the end zones, those seated in the lower part of the stadium can't even see the action. So, you know, that stadium has the worst sight lines of any facility in the National Football League, and it's also the smallest stadium in the National Football League.
The Met, has really served us well for 18 years, but I'm not thinking of 1980 as much as I'm thinking really of the 1990s and in the future, that a new stadium for 20 years from now is really important and is necessary to properly serve the people who attend sporting events.
A couple of stadium bills failed in the state legislature because lawmakers could not decide where to build the facility. In 1977, they decided to take politics out of the location issue, and a no-site bill was introduced. It passed on May 11, 1977, almost 6 years after the first proposal for a dome. The bill signing was a big relief for those involved with the long-running stadium issue, but construction was not just around the corner. First, a site had to be picked. The Stadium Commission was appointed to choose the site and the type of stadium to be built. From the start, it adopted a new way of keeping a lid on the costs.
Simplistic solutions have been offered in the legislature for the last 5, 6, 7 years, and they were so simplistic and so superficial in many instances, based upon back of envelope figuring and cost figures and things of that nature, that the legislature and the public said, we don't want that kind of study. We want an objective, unbiased, thoroughly rinsed out study of this issue, and we want a business decision to emanate from it. And that's precisely the way this commission views itself. That's the way I view my task, is to make a business decision, not a political decision. And that takes time.
Incredible as it may sound, some of the stadium commissioners had never attended a major league sports event. And the first step in the 18-month study was a tour of Metropolitan Stadium in Bloomington. The tour of the Met previewed what was to come for the commission, a national tour that would take them to major league sports stadiums around the country to find out what mistakes had been made and who ended up paying for those mistakes. We'll look at the issue of money in stadiums when our program continues. Money is the biggest consideration connected with the building of any new stadium for the Twin Cities. Sure, the fans are important, and the sports teams will have a say in the planning of the new facility, but it is money that will decide the stadium's fate.
We are determined not to build a facility unless we are assured, or we can assure ourselves, that the revenue generated by the stadium will pay for the operation of the stadium, not only the operation of the stadium, but also the debt service of the stadium.
Minnesotans agree. Only 4% of the people we polled think direct tax money is a good way to finance a stadium. 74% were opposed to using any tax funds. Most of us think the sports teams should pay, or the fans, through higher ticket prices. Mike Lynn, general manager of the Vikings, says the public should not expect sports teams to pay for a stadium. Major League Sports is a private industry, so why don't you pay for the stadium?
That's a good question. First of all, the interest rates that are being charged today, and as you know, interest rates are going up every year, are just make it economically impossible for us to build a stadium. No private industry today could ever build a football stadium.
Minnesota's law requires the facility to pay for itself, with any deficits taken care of by the 2% liquor tax to be levied on a year-to-year basis. In other cities, taxpayers have felt the bite of sports stadiums that have turned into financial disasters.
That was for 9 grand.
A case in point, the Louisiana Superdome. It started out as a $35 million project when the bonds were approved by voters in 1966, but a combination of corruption, bad management, a construction strike, and inflation pushed the real cost to over $170 million by the time it was completed. The final cost was 5 times what the voters approved, and the taxpayers were stuck with the tab. It costs more than $59,000 to operate the Superdome for just one day. Even if the Superdome's 231 doors are never opened again, it would cost taxpayers $29,000 a day in interest and principal payments. The incredible cost of the Superdome is sadly ironic when you consider that New Orleans has the highest percentage of poor people of any city in the nation. But some supporters still point to the Superdome as being the best facility of its type. 27 stories high and covering 9 acres, it could easily swallow the Houston Astrodome. And this facility would cost $500 million if built today. That sort of civic pride, the need to be bigger and better, led to the cost overruns. The Stadium Commission says Minnesotans need not worry about the same thing happening here.
I think Minnesota is unique in that we've had major league sports facilities here for 25 years, and it hasn't cost 1 dime in taxes. There's been absolutely no public support by a tax of any sort on the facility we have. I think that sort of thing could continue in Minnesota. The legislation that was created absolutely makes no provision whatsoever for income tax or property tax. And a lot of people think there will be a tax. But with the very, very responsible role that the Commission has taken, those things are just out of the question.
Another losing facility is Robert F. Kennedy Stadium in Washington, D.C. Built as a home for the football Redskins and baseball Senators, it is modest compared to the Superdome. But it flopped because the baseball team was moved to Texas, leaving the Redskins as the only tenants. The stadium stands idle too much of the time and is not earning its keep. So far, none of the bonds financing the stadium have been paid off, and because the federal government underwrote the financing, you and I are paying for RFK Stadium through our federal tax dollars. The lesson of RFK Stadium and the disaster of the Superdome pretty much sum up what goes wrong with many stadiums. They are just too expensive to build and operate, and they don't attract enough events to be economically self-sufficient. That's why the Stadium Commission jetted out of the Twin Cities in August of last year to cast their critical eyes on stadiums built in other cities to avoid mistakes that had already been made. The first stop on the Whirlwind Tour was Denver's Mile High Stadium. This facility was built in the 1940s and was updated a number of times for Major League sports. The most significant part of the Denver Stadium is the 19-ton movable grandstand put into place to provide good football seats and moved out of the way for baseball games. The section contains 21,000 seats and is considered one of the wonders of the sports world by accommodating two sports which require different shaped playing fields. And Denver's 75,000 seat capacity proves that the old stadiums can be remodeled and expanded. Next stop on the tour was Oakland's Alameda Coliseum. The commissioners liked the design and landscaping of the stadium, but they liked the financial data on it better. This stadium has been showing a profit since it opened in 1966. It is supported by two strong teams, the Oakland Raiders and A's, and stadium officials say it wouldn't do too well financially if one of the teams were to pull out. The third stop on the tour was another California stadium, Candlestick Park in San Francisco. The commissioners thought it was a nice stadium, but its location has caused problems. The fans just aren't warming up to Candlestick Park.
If you were a red-hot baseball fan and there was no wind and you had a couple of male escorts, possibly you'd like to come here.
The final stop on this initial tour was the Seattle Kingdome, a modern multi-purpose mass of concrete that cost taxpayers a healthy chunk of money. The Stadium Commission was not impressed with the appearance of the Kingdome, but they agreed it does a good job of keeping the rain out, a major consideration in Seattle. Another negative impression was its location downtown and the trouble of competing with rush hour traffic to go to an afternoon game.
Lots of trouble. We moved, in 30 minutes we moved 12 blocks until we finally parked our car to get here. And then when we got here, the parking lot was full. And you remember the gentleman telling us that there was only 3 times this year that the parking lot was full. Well, we hit it on the 4th time.
After touring a total of 18 stadiums, the commission returned to the Twin Cities to tackle the issues of location and stadium design. We'll look at that when our program continues.
Got me on TV.
Perhaps the most hotly debated topic connected with the stadium issue is location. The final site for any new stadium will be in either downtown Minneapolis at the Industry Square site or in Bloomington near the site of the Met. If the stadium is built in Bloomington, it would probably be placed in the northeast section of the parking lot between Met Sports Center and the current stadium. 7 out of 10 people in our survey prefer this site, a majority of all age groups. Don Groen of the Bloomington Chamber of Commerce says his city would welcome the new stadium because it's a proven location.
Parking lot is here. They know when they get out of their car they're going to be able to see where the stadium is at. They're not going to have to think twice about, well, which street do I take now to get to the stadium? They like the convenience of it. Minnesotans are accustomed now to tailgating or whatever you want to call it. It's along with going to the game, really Major League sports have become a multi-social event, so to speak.
Only 1 out of 10 persons we surveyed prefers the Industry Square location downtown, but supporters of the Minneapolis site say building there would save money.
This land is going to be donated by a group of business people downtown, so that costs the state, the people of the state, nothing. The land that's out of Bloomington right now will be sold off, and that's worth $6 to $8 million. So you take that $6 to $8 million and use it to build this facility, plus the $1.5 million because of our soil conditions are so much better, and you're saving nearly $10 million on the cost of a facility. Now that's important, people.
The Industry Square site lies in an area between 11th Avenue South and Chicago Avenue, and between 4th and 6th Streets. The majority of land is publicly held by the city's Housing and Redevelopment Authority and other government agencies. But a number of other landholders stand to collect a lot of money from land sales in the area, among them the 3M Company, which owns 2 parcels on the site, and the largest private landholder, the Minneapolis Star and Tribune Company, with holdings valued as much as $400,000. Both the Star and Tribune have published editorials supporting a downtown stadium. Clark Griffith of the Minnesota Twins supports a downtown location because of its easy access for youngsters and senior citizens.
People who really study the people who attend the various sporting events find that, for example, National Football League football, it's very heavy in what they call the upscale demographics. Males 18 to 49, college educated in some ways, and their income is high. They do the same studies on baseball, and they find that virtually every demographic segment is represented and represented well. So it's really a game for all the people, and I think because of that we must put a stadium somewhere that serves all the people.
A special economic report prepared for the city's Chamber of Commerce claims a downtown stadium would spur lots of economic development.
Once you build a stadium here, then you start building up this whole area. And when you build up this whole area, you make downtown alive. And out of that comes many, many more jobs, you know, many jobs in restaurants and in hotels and in retail shops and all those kind of things. And that's what we're really after. That's what the city of Minneapolis personally, selfishly, really wants, are those jobs for people, the taxes that those jobs are going to, you know, generate, those new businesses are going to generate.
Schwarzkopf also says the stadium would attract major national conventions, but members of the Stadium Commission say they have doubts about those forecasts, and Bloomington supporters are also skeptical.
I think some of the people at the other side really haven't faced this thing in a good, logical, forthright manner. I think, you know, there's a place for Major League Sports, and I think there's a place for downtown redevelopment. And I'm all for a strong downtown. But as you look around, there are other parts of the country, stadiums have not created good downtowns. The things that create good downtowns are the Pillsburys and the Lutheran Brotherhoods, the Northwestern National Life expansion programs that we see taking place, the Nicollet malls.
The Bloomington site is familiar to most Minnesotans, an advantage, but it is not without problems. The area has a relatively high water table, which could result in higher construction costs. Perhaps the biggest obstacle facing Minneapolis could be the city's decision to support a dome facility only. If the city keeps that position, it could lose the stadium altogether, because some of the commissioners feel a dome facility could not be built for the amount of money the legislature allocated.
I doubt very much that we are going to be able to build a dome stadium. And from what I have seen, I am not so sure that we need one. They are very expensive to build. They are hideously expensive to operate. And that's one thing that we have to keep in mind. It's not only the construction cost. Even if we could come up with the money for the construction cost, the operational costs are increasing every year.
But as far as I can see, the only way we would be able to get a dome stadium is if some individual, some group, some corporation might help to subsidize it. The $55 million, in my estimation, is not enough to build a multi-purpose dome stadium at this time.
The issue of to dome or not to dome will come into clearer focus in September, when the Stadium Commission gets final price tags for the options. And while the controversy over the stadium itself continues, some questions regarding the Stadium Commission and the stadium law have also risen. About 350 metro area bar owners filed suit against the Metro Council and the Stadium Commission. Afton bar owner John Liftoe, the plaintiff, charged the commission is unconstitutional because 3 of its members live outside the area the body serves. And he charged the 2% liquor tax is being imposed unfairly. But the High Court halted the year-long legal battle last week, ruling that the commission is constitutional and that the 2% liquor tax is fair and reasonable. But the case isn't over yet. Liftoe and the other bar owners have decided to appeal last week's ruling.
Why should one industry support another entertainment industry? We're in the entertainment business just like they are. So why should one entertainment business support another entertainment business? If I was to go belly up or something, or go broke or have a bad year, can I go to the Twins and the Vikings and the Kicks and say, hey, I'm having a bad year, will you help me out? No way.
A final note from our special poll: 2 out of 3 of you think a new stadium will mean a cost overrun and higher taxes. And as we've shown, that certainly has been the case in some cities. But the Stadium Commission says no way, that a cost overrun is not only bad business, but also against the law. The Commission says a new stadium will be modest, with plenty of thrills, but few frills. So whether you're for or against a stadium, the Commission promises its decision will be made in the best interests of the taxpayers. And we'll all know what that decision is on December 1st. I'm Byron Barnett. Have a nice evening.